Recently, Hypixel Skyblock has been receiving a lot of big updates, more importantly at a rate faster than any player could have ever imagined. This is most obvious with the new dungeon floor releases and the introduction of the mayor election system, bringing more and more new weapons, armor, and various other items for players to utilize. Naturally, most players try to get a hold of all the new content they can as fast as they can, but is this always the best choice? But before we go any further, if you have any further questions or comments about this video, be sure to pop into my Twitch streams. I stream every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The links are down in the description below. It's a great place to talk to me and a bunch of other wonderful people, so I highly recommend you check it out. With that out of the way, let's get right into the video. Alrighty, so as you can see in today's video, we're going to be covering new content, new updates, and more specifically the newer weapons and items that have been added to the game, because I've seen that a lot of people have actually told me like a ton of different things in my comments, on my Twitch streams, and in my Discord, and just in various different places, a lot of interesting things, such as why do you still use an AOTD, why don't you upgrade to a warped AOTE, etc., and a whole bunch of other sort of controversial, not so controversial, but just different types of things in that category, where they sort of like, I guess not really pick on me, but they sort of question why I'm sort of like lacking behind with updates, and if there's any reason to be buying all the new stuff and things like that. So without further ado, let's get right into all the points I want to cover in today's video. And the first one is the fact that the dungeons update and the mayor election update has added a ton of new features. So let me give you guys an example. As you can see here, I've got the auction house opened up on the menu right in front of you guys, and I'm going to go through the first page of just weapons, just because it's the easiest one, and it's one that I feel like a lot of people keep talking about. And it's just going to be, if you look at these things like the ice spray wand, maybe this giant sword here, fully maxed out, fabled, mythic, all the enchant swarm 5, it's really expensive, and as you can see, there's a whole bunch of really cool new items, like this Shadow Fury as well. There's another Shadow Fury here, and basically what my point is, we've got the Daedalus Axe as well, and what my point is that a lot of people keep saying things like, why don't you buy one of these cool weapons? You have 200 mil in your purse. Why don't you buy something and upgrade your AOTD? It's not good anymore, blah blah blah, all these different things. Well, that's going to lead me to my first point for this video, and that's going to be that you don't need any of the new stuff, and it's because all of this new dungeon gear, all these new weapons, items, armors, everything that gets added to this game at first release is going to be really powerful. Obviously, admins and the staff, the dev team, haven't been able to tweak things, and they're still implementing changes, adding new things, making sure that things aren't too OP, they aren't buffing things too much, etc, etc, and of course the new dungeon gear specifically is going to overpower all the old things, but this doesn't mean that the original weapons that were in the game beforehand are necessarily bad or underclassed or whatever it may be. Like, sure, they're going to be more powerful weapons released to the game, as the new stuff is going to just overtake the old stuff, because power creep is a thing, and it should be a thing, and I'm sure a lot of you guys already know all about power creep, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about that in this video. But what my main point is that, say I take this fabled AOTD here. Now, I've maxed this thing out pretty much. I'm missing a few enchants like Sharpness 6, Giant Killer 6, and then of course Thunderlord 6 and Lethality 6, because these weren't added at the time of me making my sword. And then I'm missing also the Fuming Hot Potato books, and probably some other things that I can't really think about in this video right now. Now, if you take a look at the AOTE in my inventory, I've actually got a warped AOTE here in Aspect of the End, and this is a weapon that was added recently with Floor 5, which was thought to completely overpower the AOTD in the long run. Well, there's one thing that I want to show you guys right now, which is going to prove one of my points as to why I don't think it's worth upgrading to all these new weapons, and we're going to have to head over to the end in order for me to show you that. So as you can see, we are in the end now. I'm on the first floor where all the 4,500 health Endermen are, and I'm just going to quickly throw on my superior set, just so I can do the maximum amount of damage. At least this is my highest damaging set, I'm pretty sure of, at least. I'm also going to equip my level 100 Wither Skeleton, as that's also my highest damaging pet. I'm just going to show you guys a quick damage comparison of my AOTD and my AOTE, just to show you guys really the difference between them, and whether it's worth spending the extra money or selling your old weapon for these things. So without further ado, I'm going to hit this Enderman. It's going to do 150,000 damage on the first hit. If I hit this one, 131,000, 129,000, 127,000, 126,000. So the average damage here is around 130,000 maybe, if we exclude the 150,000 on the initial first hit. But you can see here that it's around 130 damage per hit with my AOTD. Now if I switch over to the AOTE now, and I'll show you guys how much damage that thing does, it does 148,000, and it consistently does 148,000 damage no matter what I do. Now if you take a quick comparison at both of these weapons, you can see that my AOTD can deal more damage than the AOTE, as with the Fabled ability, it can do up to 20% of the extra crit damage, and it was about 150,000 damage, which is 10k more than the average damage that this weapon does. However, as you guys saw, the average was around 130,000, and if we hit one more time, just a random Enderman here, we do 148,000, which is close to 150 as well. But what my point is that the damage difference between both of these weapons is like maybe 10 to 20,000 at most. And in my opinion, I don't see the point of being able to do an extra 10 to 20,000 damage and have to spend so much more extra money just to get a brand new weapon or sell my old one or go through any of that hassle, especially when all the prices are in a very weird state right now. So what exactly do I mean by this? People might be thinking, oh well, just sell your AOTD and then just use this AOT instead. It's clearly better and it's so much more effective. Well, this is where I say not necessarily. As you guys know, a lot of people, including maybe some of you guys watching this video right now, probably think that a weapon like the AOTD is currently bad. Now, while it's not necessarily the best weapon anymore, or it's not necessarily an insanely good weapon, as there's clearly better options now, it still doesn't make it a bad weapon. However, because the majority of people think that it's a bad weapon, all the prices of AOTDs naturally just drop down in price because nobody wants them anymore. And then if I went to go and sell my AOTD right now with all these enchants, the recombobulator, the rune, and everything that I threw onto it, I would be losing a ton of money at this moment in time. And right now, I don't feel like it's really worth underselling my AOTD just to replace it with a better or slightly better AOTE and have to go through all that hassle, because if you guys didn't know already, a lot of these items are currently really low in demand. Nobody wants to buy them, and if no one's going to buy my AOTD, then what's the point in even trying to sell it in the first place when I can just keep on using it because it's still a great weapon and it's not necessarily anything terrible. So that was my first point. Like, I'm just saying that the AOTD isn't necessarily a bad weapon, and I'm using the AOTD and the AOTE as a classic example because it's the one that people bring up to me all the time. But this goes for a lot of other things. People say, oh, why'd you buy a Shadow Fury? And back in the day, people would say, why don't you buy a Midas Sword? Midas Swords are good, like, they do a lot of damage, blah, blah, blah. You have a lot of money on you. And if you guys didn't already know, I am currently working towards a Dragon Pet, and obviously, 200 mil isn't that much when you put into perspective of a Dragon Pet's initial cost. An epic one goes for around 210 mil, and the legendary ones go for even more than that. So me having to spend an extra 10, 15, 20 mil, whatever the amount of any of these new weapons actually costs me, it's going to set me back quite a lot for my main goal, which is a pet that I really, really want. Regardless of whether the pet is good or not, it's the one that I'm going for. And spending money to just try and get like the extra 10k damage, 15k damage, to me is not worth it. And I feel like there's a lot more better uses of those coins that I could be spending instead. However, there's another really important factor that I need to cover in this video as well, and that's the fact that you shouldn't not buy these items either. If you're a mid-game player who has maybe a decent AOTD, but you're looking to upgrade, you want that extra damage, you have the coins or something like that, and you're willing to spend the money on the new update stuff, and you think it's going to be well worth your coins, then I highly recommend you pick up a Livid Dagger, or you pick up a Shadow Fury, or any of the new weapons, because they are really, really good, of course, and they do outclass some of the older stuff. But you also need to keep in mind that all the prices of all these new weapons and armors as well, I'm not talking about the armors in this video, but everything that's new to the game is going to be overpriced. Obviously, on the initial release of Floor 6, all the new things were introduced to the game. Nobody knows what's good, nobody knows what's bad, but once everyone gets a hold of these things and starts figuring out what they do and what they're like, people start paying massive amounts of money to get a hold of them, because obviously people like the new stuff, people want the new stuff, people are going to pay for the new stuff, and it's going to be much more expensive in the beginning than it is going to be later on down the line. So when it comes to getting a hold of any of these items, I'm not saying that I'm never going to buy a Giant Sword, or I'm never going to buy a Shadow Fury, I'm never going to get a hold of a Livid Dagger, and maybe I won't get a hold of these weapons, but what I do know for a fact is that if I was going to go for any of these really fancy items, weapons, arms, whatever it is, I'm going to be buying them later when the new stuff gets released, all the Floor 8, 9, and 10 stuff, and I'm going to make a decision then when all of the content has been released to dungeons, once the updates are going to sort of stop rolling out or pause for a little bit. Once the updates are going to like sort of slow down a bit and they're not going to be pumping out too much intense content, or at least content that affects the meta and what the best items in the games are, only then will I be spending a lot of my money on some of the cooler weapons and armor, because at that point, everyone's had a chance to play with them, everyone's had a chance to get a hold of them, there's a lot more in the market, there's a lot more circling around, and the prices of things are going to drop, and that is the best moment to buy all the cool stuff. And I know a lot of you guys really want some new items, everybody wants to play with all the new content, everybody likes the new things, especially when Marina came out. out, and the shark armor was released, the new Rod of the Sea was out, everyone was mass buying shark fins, shark bait, all the shark related stuff. Obviously that stuff is new, it's exciting, it's really cool, but if you're patient and you think smart and you play smart, you're going to be able to save a lot more money in the long run, and you're just going to be better off than most other people who don't make the smartest decisions or the more responsible decisions. Now the last point that I want to make in this video, which relates to all the stuff that I talked about already, is that not every item shouldn't be bought. There are some things that do get released that you should be buying, you should be purchasing or investing in when they're introduced to the game in the first 2 to 3 days, and one good example of this is like the mythological event stuff. So when Diana was elected, obviously all these Griffin Feathers and Ancient Claws were introduced to the game, as well as the Daedalus Stick and also the Enchanted Ancient Claws. However, the Daedalus Stick I'm not going to be talking about, and you guys will see why in a second. But the Griffin Feathers, as you guys know, can be farmed up relatively easily if you just sort of dig up the burrows, you use a Griffin pet, and you just play the game normally, exploring, tunneling, and finding treasures. Now, because it's really easy to get a hold of the Griffin Feathers, or like not super easy, but much easier than say the Daedalus Sticks, or like the Midas Jewels, and all the really cool pet items and other stuff that was introduced, this makes it so that a lot of it will be in supply, which means that the supply and demand for these items will be relatively balanced, and you should be able to buy a lot of them for relatively cheap and at a fairly good price. And if you know this and are aware of this, you can actually use this to your advantage and then buy a lot of these items when they're cheaper, or buy a lot of these items when people are just selling them for whatever reason, and then you can craft them into the cool items. You can sell them later on down the line when the mayors are no longer introduced, and essentially you can do the complete opposite of what I said in the beginning of not buying Shadow Furies, not buying Giant Swords or all the dungeon gear, because it's a very different situation to what I was talking about in the beginning of the video. Although with all that being said, do not let this video discourage you from buying anything that you want in the game. I did make a video a while back talking about things in Skyblock and sort of like common misconceptions, common sort of talked about topics as such, where people are always too fussed about buying the best items, buying the best gear, and getting a hold of the best damage in the game as possible. Now, if you're a person who really likes getting a hold of the new items and just loves playing Skyblock because of the new updates, and you want to get all the new items first release, you want to get a hold of the highest damage as fast as possible, and you don't mind spending those extra coins to get it first, then by all means go for it. Do what you want. Skyblock is a game where you're supposed to be having fun, and if you're not having fun, then you're not playing the game right at all. And I don't like the fact that a lot of people try to take that away from others by saying things like, oh, you shouldn't be buying a Midas Sword because Midases are so bad now. If the player that wants the Midas Sword wants the Midas Sword, let them have it. Just because it's not the best weapon in the game doesn't mean that people shouldn't be buying it. And at the end of the day, if you want to be getting a hold of the new items and you want to be spending that extra money to get them, go for it. I can't stop you. But with all that being said, hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. If you did find it informative or enjoyable in some way, please do leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel, because I make these Hypixel Skyblock videos every Wednesdays and Fridays. And also, if you got any further questions or comments about this video, be sure to pop into my Twitch streams. I stream every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The links are down in the description below. We tend to talk about a lot of these types of topics over there and have some pretty nice open discussions as well. So if you want to join in, feel free to do so when I'm live. But with all that being said, guys, hopefully you all did enjoy this video, and as always, take care and peace. GG's. Absolutely nothing. What would you expect anyways? GG's, boys, and boom! Finally, we get to lose 5% less coins on death, dude. Wow, how useful, man.